The kids are all right. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
Episode 180.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
eXoDOS rocks.
Regen TenGen.
It's not me, it's you.
All these stories and lots more coming up on today's show.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
Hello there, Dave.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm good. Have you adopted a new national identity this week? Because I can see there are some flags up behind you.
I have always felt an affinity to Spain since I went on there on holiday.
Really?
Yeah.
You feeling extra Spanish today for some reason?
Extra Spanish. I had paella. I had some sangria.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Good. Good. And you didn't watch any sport over the weekend then?
I might watch the golf.
Come on, get it out the way. Get it out the way. The tennis. The
tennis as well, yeah.
Good Spanish victory there.
Was there any other? I went to bed last night early. Did I miss anything?
Oh, come on, man. You may have missed the football, Dave. But, you know, you've got to be in it to win it. And at least, you know, England were in it to a degree, but they did not win it.
I do feel bad for England. After they've lost, I feel bad for them. But
for people outside of Europe, we're talking about the Euros, the big football competition.
Yes.
And also in our Discord, people have been talking about the American equivalent, which
Copa America.
I think Argentina won, didn't they, yesterday?
Yes. Yeah. So England were in the final. Scotland traditionally does not support England to the point of supporting anyone who's playing against them. However, not with any malice. It's just a bit of fun. And I always feel bad for the English people after they lose, inevitably. It's the English press that does my boxing. They're always talking about shades of 66, and you can't watch a game without them talking about England.
58 years of hurt and all of that stuff.
Oh, I just enjoy it.
Well, that's it for another 2 years until the World Cup comes around.
60 years of hurt.
Yeah.
60 years of hurt.
Moving on from sport, let's talk about what we've been up to this week.
Yes.
Apart from hastily buying Spanish bunting on Amazon Prime.
How could you accuse me of such a thing? Look, they've been there for months. Check back in previous shows, you'll see them.
We've been building the Dev Den in the cave. So this is a new exhibit that I've mentioned in the past.
Yeah.
We've actually got down to building it, and that's come along nicely. We had a visit this weekend from Mike Daly.
Yep.
Who has just this morning shared a picture on Discord of him as a developer some 20 or 30 years ago, sat at the exact same PC model that we've put in the Dev Den using the same system. So that's really nice to see. We've actually managed to nail some authenticity as to how a developer might have worked back in the day.
He's got a shirt on as well. A proper
He's got
shirt.
a shirt on. He scrubs up. And then by the end of this week, we hope to have the Lemmings arcade cabinet finished, and I'm working on that video as well. So really, really busy as we build up to my, just to remind everyone, parental leave at the end of the month, where I will be disappearing for a while, but the show will go on.
I did notice the star of the Dev Den, apart from Jason himself, was an Atari Mega STE. I wasn't expecting to see that. Wonderful machine that is. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to seeing that up and running, connected to his Korg. Was it a M1 or a T1? Something like that. Music kit is not really my forte, but it looks really nice. And I can't wait to hear it sing. And I've got some trips this week to get some props and some display stands and things like that to bulk out the Dev Den. So it's coming along well. Yeah, what have you been doing? You've been building the Catio?
I'm not building a Catio myself, but I've been doing lots of different DIY jobs around the house, fixing a few things here and there. Struggling with insomnia this week, but apart from that, I've been busy doing little jobs and getting little amounts of things that don't look as if anything's changed, but they all need done. So I'm moving forward that way. I need to pick a game. I've got a few days off, so I need to pick a game to play. I haven't decided yet.
Well, you will have the choice of pretty much any MS-DOS game ever made to play soon, won't you?
Well, that's a good point.
We are going to discuss in our first story today.
Shall we go on with it then?
Let's do that.
Get fired in? Let's do it. A hill that I am always happy to die on is this. The DOS period of gaming was the best period of gaming that ever existed. I've said it before on the show, and I will say it again, I'm sure. The sudden appearance of VGA, Sound Blaster, combined with powerful CPUs and hard disks, opened the gates to the creation of loads of games that simply were not possible before. This continued with the space provided by CD-ROMs, with SVGA, and finally on to Voodoo cards at the tail end of the DOS era. Almost every game that we play now can easily be traced back to that era as its clear ancestor. Neil, do you agree with me on that? You'll have to unmute yourself, otherwise nobody will know.
And does that answer your question?
Neil,
Sorry.
Do you agree with me?
We're recording a little bit later in the day than we normally do today, so I'm not on point with the mute button. Yeah, so you said that the DOS era is the best era of gaming. I agree with you, but not just because of the DOS games. Do you want me to go into that now?
Go into it.
Go into it,
Go
yeah.
into it,
So if we zoom out a little bit from the DOS games, we've got amazing DOS games, 256 colors, CD-ROMs, great audio. But we've also got the Super Nintendo, the Mega Drive. They're in full stride and knocking out amazing games. We've got the PlayStation over the horizon on its way. We've got the death throes of the Amiga and the Atari ST, but still being greatly enjoyed. You can still pop down to your local arcade and play the classics, as well as see texture mapped 3D games and what's coming on stream there, and what we will hopefully get in the next generation of home consoles and PC games as those increase, as our PCs increase in power. So yes, I agree with you that era is the best era of gaming, but it's for all of those things, all the excitement around that, all the different types of hardware, and all the different ways of experiencing gaming at that time, not just DOS. But in essence, I agree, yes.
Yeah, so that's an answer for people who like sitting in fences, yes.
Come on, man. Do you not agree with me?
I do broadly agree with you. I just think that if you look at what happened in DOS gaming, X-Wing, Doom, Quake, all those different things coming together, these weren't possible before because the doors were suddenly broken wide open for it. And I guess you could say on the console gaming, what would eventually come to the PC with the Voodoo, the console gaming side of things, were these powerful custom chipsets.
I think what you're talking about there is the cutting edge of gaming was exciting you at the time.
Yeah.
And the cutting edge was on a PC that you could upgrade month on month. New games coming out that would utilize that power, that would, scale up to give you a better frame rate automatically. Yes, that was exciting. But I enjoyed just as much going around to my mate's house and playing Streets of Rage on his Mega Drive.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a slight difference there. Cutting edge and just fun.
Fair enough. I don't think anyone can argue with that. I do, of course, accept that there's a role for simpler games. In fact, sometimes that's what I want as an antidote for the time taken up when you play DOS games. Things like a simple shooter on the arcade or even a platformer on the Amstrad CPC. But today we're going to talk about eXoDOS, which is a project to archive, curate, and more importantly, present in a way that is incredibly accessible the full library of MS-DOS games. Today's submission is thanks to Fourth Directive, and it's a video from Metal Jesus Rocks. Metal Jesus Rocks is a PC big box game fan who's run a channel for many years. He's one of the big YouTube names, and he's done a video after people pestered him to try eXoDOS, and they finally got round to it with this version 6 of eXoDOS. So he's not been in eXoDOS since the start. This is someone who is an expert on PC gaming. I think no one can disagree with that. Coming to eXoDOS with fresh eyes. Now, for the eXoDOS platform, there are 7,600 games in it. Of course, a huge number are rubbish. But there are hundreds and hundreds of fantastic games in it. So in this video, Jason explains fully what eXoDOS is, and he's got some lovely visuals of PC games playing in the background, and that's why it's so good when you watch these games. It isn't just, the eXoDOS is not just your normal download with random files all together. The files are all there, of course, but this is all packaged together with the manual, the copy protection, maps, etc. And you can configure your PC settings, which will then apply to any games that launch from it. Now, as the package has progressed over the years, it's got better. And there are now settings for scan lines, etc. And importantly, you can ask it to pick what it thinks is best suited for the game and your system. One of the bugbears of getting into retro is the barriers that you need to get over to do things properly. Things that are annoying, and you have to work out, well, how do I get this to work properly? Want to play a game? Well, how about having to learn a new hobby first? No one wants to do that. So this aims to solve that, and it's come along in strides. It's absolutely fantastic. It now has books too. Books about DOS and magazines, as well as the catalogues that normally came in game boxes. The catalogues, in fact, as Jason points out in his video, the catalogues are a real time capsule into what was happening at the time.
I love those catalogues, whether it's the Home Computer Club or Special Reserve, or just this week, Jason he had at home a catalogue, full color catalogue of what's called eXoDOS, which was an electronic distribution service. Here in the UK. I never saw it in the wild, but you could go up to the counter and you could ask for a game from the catalogue, and they would write it to disc and everything and give it to you there and then. And I couldn't really find any record of the eXoDOS catalogue online, and Jason turned up with one. Fantastic. So I'm going to get that scanned. And that's the sort of thing that you would want to find in eXoDOS. Accolade catalogues, Sierra catalogues, LucasArts catalogues.
Yeah.
Just brilliant to look through those, aren't they?
We tend to look at things, we look at our game in isolation, we look at our system in isolation. When you look at these catalogues, they talk about things that were happening at the same time. So it's a fantastic way to see how things were at that point in time, that window in time. Now, I think this on a PC in combination with a Mister or some type of Pi setup for consoles and arcades and other systems, like there's a new one that Heber have on pre-sale. The
multi-Pi. So check that one out.
Multi-Pi is, as far as I can see, a highly polished way of having a Pi in a consoleized system. So that combined with a PC will give you access to thousands of games, nearly anything you'd want to play, in very nearly the best way to play them, and certainly with the least hassle to play them. I'll give you access to it all. And it brings me to a question. If I hadn't gone deep into buying retro stuff in 2018 onwards, if I just dipped in and out as I had been for the preceding 20 years before that, would a Mister and a PC running eXoDOS be what I got into? And knowing all that, would I then buy the retro stuff I have around me just now? If I already had eXoDOS and a Mister, would I buy that? I'm not sure. I'll answer in a minute though. But Neil, you first. And we should say we're talking about what you would have at home if you didn't have the cave to go into every day and play around in.
I see. Yeah, I mean, just on eXoDOS first, it's MAME, isn't it? It's like MAME for PC gaming, because you've got to remember PCs had different specs, different amounts of memory, different graphics cards. You know, they've been very different beasts over the years, just like all the different arcade machines. So through the use of DOSBox, INI files, config files, all the other things to just make it a seamless experience and a front end, you can dip into any period and any game from DOS. It's wonderful. Let's just not skim over this part of it, which is that it is illegal. It's as illegal as downloading any other pirated game or ROM file. It's not official. It's not licensed. You see big box packages that you can buy on Etsy and eBay of eXoDOS, which look lovely, but that is not an official release. It's just pure piracy. But as we so often do on this show, piracy is preservation. That's what it comes down to. In this situation, especially, I think. And as I say, piracy is preservation out loud, I immediately think I want a mug with that on and a sticker. So I'm going to contact Dan and get those made. Piracy is preservation. In the case of Nintendo, they will fight tooth and nail to bash you down and bash illegal distribution down. In the case of DOS gaming history, there are so many companies that no longer exist, and there are so many games in this collection. I don't know who would start an action, how they would approach it, or how they would try and squash it. Would they, presumably they would just try and squash their own games out of there. And as soon as that happens, eXoDOS would become fragmented and doesn't really achieve its purpose if there are no Sierra games, if there are no LucasArts games in there. So it is nice that it is a whole and complete thing. And I don't know how they would squash it anyway, because generally it's distributed as a torrent. So, you know, who are you going to target? But parking all of that for a moment, I'm glad it exists. Being able to search, for example, by year, by publisher, or even by things like Roland MT32 support. You can just filter it by that, and then you can try them out and you can hear all their alternative soundtracks that you might not have heard first time round through DOSBox with the MT32 layer emulating that and the sound fonts and everything. It's wonderful. And I do have a PC dedicated to this, and I've paired it up with the CRT monitor. So it's a Windows 10 PC with a CRT on it, just to make it feel a bit more authentic. I could be back in 1993 again using it. It's great. And I like that I've got it dedicated. It doesn't take a powerful PC. If you've got an old PC kicking around, like your last gen PC kicking around in the garage or something, dedicate it to eXoDOS, because then you don't get any of the other interruptions. Don't put anything else on there. Just put eXoDOS on there. Hell, tell Windows not to load Explorer.exe. Just go straight into eXoDOS, pick a game and play it. Dave.
Yeah, the playing on an emulator window on my main PC, at least for me, doesn't work. A dedicated machine is head and shoulders, worlds different for me.
Yeah. And also to read the magazines and the catalogues and things like that in the collection. Although I might not do that on a CRT. I might need a second modern screen for reading on. Would I replace my collection with it, was your question? I am going to talk about the cave. I know you said at home. But there are certain exhibitions in the cave where it would make sense to use this. For example, I've got the barcode scanning system in the shop. Grab a console game, scan the barcode, and it pops up. Well, it would be nice to have a PC equivalent of that. Grab a big box DOS game, maybe scan the barcode on that as well. Maybe it doesn't use the front end that comes with eXoDOS, and we come up with a custom system. But at least we know in the eXoDOS package, I have every game in every folder configured to run, and I just need to launch the correct batch file to get it going. At home, yeah, because it saves so much space. I would certainly, there's always a time and place for vintage hardware, but this certainly would be the centerpiece for me, just wanting to sit down and play some old games with no hassle. Brilliant. Maybe attach an old keyboard and an old mouse to it, just to, if you're not getting RSI, then is it authentic? Give me a crappy mouse. Give me a keyboard that I really need to hammer to type on, but keep that modern PC at the heart of it with eXoDOS. It's a good experience. I would recommend it. But what about you, Dave? Are you about to start selling your vintage PC collection for this?
No, I'm not. I do like playing with the hardware. I do like setting it up. But if I didn't already have it, now knowing that eXoDOS exists where it didn't exist 6 or 7 years ago to the state it is now, would I buy all the vintage hardware when I could set up a CRT, a clicky IBM Model M? I could set all that up and it could be, as far as I touch and I see, exactly the same. I don't know if I would buy all the hardware if I didn't already have it. It's difficult to say. I mean, it's hypothetical. But for me, the important thing is to immerse myself in the game. I like getting lost in a different world, and I don't like playing in a window. As I said, I don't like being able to alt-tab out of it. I would certainly have some form of real hardware in the way you described with a CRT, perhaps, or the actual real hardware. I'm not sure. But as for eXoDOS itself, I'll repeat the same plea that I've made before. Where a game is available on Steam or GOG, the right and the wise thing to do is to remove the game files from the eXoDOS distribution and have a folder to receive the game files from GOG or Steam, or the originals from floppy or CD, as the wall behind me would have. Exo can store the patches in the distribution and apply them to the originals, and from there we can get what Exo has now, but making sure that people that have the originals or have paid for it in GOG or Steam can play it. It is extra work, it's a bit of a hassle, but eXoDOS has shown it's willing to put in astronomical amounts of effort, so they could do this. And yes, of course, it does stop people getting them for free, but where the games cost just a few quid or just a few dollars, wherever you are in the world on GOG, that's not much of a barrier. The most important thing, though, isn't about putting money in Electronic Arts' pocket. I don't really care about Electronic Arts. If they folded tomorrow, we didn't get any more Madden, and they've stopped FIFA anyway, but they stopped all those games, I wouldn't care. But the most important thing is protecting what is a vital preservation of art from legal threat, from the threat of legal action, protecting them from the potential of being shut down. Now, of course, you couldn't make this project disappear. I mean, you couldn't make it vanish, but you could stop development of it, and they could go after the guy that runs it all, Exo himself. He actually does sell a big box version of eXoDOS on Etsy. It doesn't have the games on it, but it's an Infocom style box. There's even a Peter Molyneux version of it as well. He even sells it on there. They could go after him, and I wouldn't want that. The project is so massively important for preservation and access that I wouldn't want it to stop. If you think about where eXoDOS is now, where will it be in 10 years' time? It mustn't stop. So there you go. That's my soapbox rant.
And I would go so far as to say, Dave, I'd love to see exactly the same for every system.
Yeah.
Every system out there.
Yeah. And I know that abandonware is a grey area, but if you do this and it encourages developers to say, hang on, we can release our games and people will buy it as a result of this, I'm okay with that. You could argue they don't deserve to get the money. I don't really care. I think having this is much more important than EA getting a couple of quid.
Dave, do you know how it is that this show affords all of the special effects, all of the slick production values, your fee and to fulfill your rider?
Yeah, and to pay the Duncan. As well. It's from our kind and generous sponsor, PCBWay.
It is PCBWay.com, who are celebrating their 10th anniversary.
No.
So they are a well-established company. Are they not?
It's
they are in 16 days.
Yes.
10th anniversary tour. Yeah, there's a countdown on the website. 16 days and 4 hours at the time of recording. And I have seen the lovely Elaine at PCBWay doing the tour of various YouTubers around the world, sharing her pictures on social media. So they are going all out to celebrate 10 years of supplying people with PCBs, with CNC milling, 3D printing, everything you need to prototype, manufacture, or even distribute your final product. They do pretty much everything that you could possibly want. Everything, Dave.
Everything?
Everything.
Absolutely. I was looking at shared projects on hard disk clickers.
Oh, are they on there now?
Yeah, they're on there now. So a hard disk clicker we've covered before, and it runs off the either the IDE signal or just the LED signal, and it makes a little clicking noise from a speaker to simulate the noise that a hard disk makes. It's not just to make it sound authentic. It actually helps you because you know when the computer's thinking when you're doing things on it.
Yeah, when we were building the dev den this week, Jason was adamant that he was going to use spinning hard disk, all the original parts. I
watched that and I thought, I wonder how long that will last. How long did that last?
Well, I'll tell you. We fired up the Amstrad to test it out, and the hard drive was broken. So it didn't boot once. And it was at that point that he said, do you know what, Neil? I might use a modern alternative. And I was a punch in the air. I was like, yes.
Jason...
I thought the day would come later, but it came pretty quick. Yeah,
Jason, get a clicker. That'll solve it, and make sure it's connected to the IDE activity light, the hard disk activity light. So important as well to make you feel right.
So perhaps a Pico Mem. I think we're looking at Pico Mem, and maybe we can hook a clicker up to it, and that'll be a nice combo. So anyway, let's go back to why we were talking about that. Thank you, PCBWay.com. Go and check them out. If I say TenGen, what are the first games that come to mind? For me, it's those published for the Amiga under the brand. So things like Tubing, which was a fun little game where two of you race down the river rapids in a tube or a rubber ring, and Escape from the Planet of the Robot Monsters, which I played as recently as last week with Baz when he visited the cave, and it holds up okay. I quite enjoyed that. Dave, what's your instinctive response when I say the name TenGen?
Well, I think of two compilations. I think of the first one, which is 3 games, Escape from the Planet of the Robot Monsters, which you've mentioned. It is a good game. It does hold up a bit. Clax, which I still enjoy, and Cyberball, which I never get into. And I was only aware in recent years that they were kind of Atari, but not quite. I think you'll explain that shortly. I also incorrectly think about the 10-star pack, which has nothing to do with them, which was made by Silica Shop, a prolific UK retailer that created their own games packs to help sell STs and Amigas. And I think more so on Amigas than STs, the 10-star pack was a mainstay for Amiga owners. But nothing to do with
TenGen.
Nothing to do. Just my incorrectly firing memory.
Yeah. Well, I did know back in the day that they were somehow associated with Atari, but I'll go into it in a bit more detail. They were created in 1987 following the split of Atari into two companies. I mean, a couple of years after that happened. You had the arcade company and you had the home computer and consoles company. Now, the arcade business, of course, were creating cutting-edge arcade games on up-to-date hardware in the new arcade machines. But because of the legalities of how things were set up and agreed, the arcade division were not allowed to use the name Atari for any home computer or console releases. That was the domain of the other division. So instead, they created this new subsidiary called TenGen, which is a word derived from the game Go, which is also the origins of the word Atari. So that's a nice little link there. TenGen have an interesting history, really, of being scrappers, I'd say. They first released games in 1988 for the Nintendo Entertainment System, but this was under the strict terms that Nintendo enforced on companies who wanted to release games for the NES. Things like exclusivity for 2 years if you released a game on their platform. You couldn't release it anywhere else.
Terrible.
I'm sure there are many more examples, but that's just one of them that I've read about. So TenGen set about hacking away at the NES's lockout chip to create their own unlicensed cartridges. A familiar story. Sounds like what Activision did back on the VCS, but there was no lockout chip back then. So they had a slightly easier time, but they still faced court battles. And later, EA would do with the Mega Drive cartridges, and there were numerous other examples. So TenGen doing this, of course, triggered lawsuits, and that particular scrap wouldn't be settled until 1994, when most of us had moved on from the NES.
Did they win? Did they win? Did the court deem that they were right?
It says it was settled, so I guess they just came up with an agreed price rather than going all the way in that.
Because
one.
it could be settled it could be settled so much in TenGen's favour that Nintendo said, we were wrong to do this, and we've cost you 6 years of sales. So here's a big bag of, I don't know. Here's a big bag of money.
Well, I'll carry on talking. Feel free to look into that, Dave. You do some live research. He is tapping away. So TenGen were making and releasing their own cartridges, including their own version of Tetris in 1989. That resulted in another court battle because, of course, Nintendo had their version of Tetris, a very popular version. And they did lose that battle. I know they lost that one. There were about 50,000 copies of TenGen's Tetris made it out before everything had to be pulled. So that's usually worth snapping one of those up. I see them for about £300, $400, $350, $400 on eBay, if you come across that. So now, free of Nintendo's exclusivity shackles, TenGen would release games for most consoles, everything from the NES through to the TurboGrafx 16 they released games for as well. And they also then licensed their games. So TenGen licensing Atari games out for home computers. For example, here in the UK, we would see them published by Domark. Other countries might have seen them under different publishers, but they still had the TenGen name on. You knew where they came from. Have you got any info for me, Dave?
Yeah, so settled in 1994, it ended up entwining the Tetris dispute.
Okay.
Atari largely, TenGen was Atari's brand, so Atari largely lost the lawsuit. However, Nintendo did make some concessions. They did offer £5 million out to small businesses, and they changed their smaller businesses. They changed the way they do things. So there were some skirmishes that Nintendo lost, but overall it appears they beat Atari on this.
Yeah, and
there will be comments correcting me.
Swallowing up the Tetris case into that probably really put a lot of weight behind it for Nintendo, yeah.
It wasn't just Tetris that they infringed the licenses on as well. It says several intellectual property licenses, and there must have been other things as well as Tetris.
Naughty TenGen. Why am I talking about them today, though? Well, aside from that interesting bit of history there that we were talking about, the name was retired in '94 with those lawsuits coming to a head, and also a full acquisition by Time Warner of Atari Games taking place.
So that's the other Atari, isn't it?
That is the Atari Games. Oh God, there's so many Ataris, aren't there?
Yeah, Did Time Warner have? No.
Time Warner were involved way before.
Yeah, so this
is
sold
them acquiring the rest.
One half of Atari to Jack Tramwell, and the other half continued as Atari Arcades, which then had TenGen, and then someone bought that back. I don't know.
Well, anyway, TenGen disappeared in '94. And that also happened in '94. So that was the last we had of TenGen releases. The TenGen name has now been acquired in 2024, not by a game studio or a publisher, but by a single guy by the name of Jeff Silvers. This is reported on NintendoLife.com, and thank you to Bajako6502 for submitting the story. And when I say acquired, what I mean is he discovered that nobody owned it anymore. It wasn't registered. Whoever had the rights had either let them expire or just simply didn't know that they owned them and they expired. So Jeff went through the process of registering it with the Patent and Trademark Office in the US. And now he'll be publishing his own indie games using the TenGen brand again. I don't think that means he'll have the rights to use the logo, the original logo, or anything like that, but he can certainly use that word. The first game he'll release is called Z and Z, so that's satisfying pronunciations on both sides of the Atlantic. I like that. And it's a platformer for the NES, quite fittingly. It's got a cute Bomberman style aesthetic with touches of New Zealand story in some of the enemy designs and a big helping of Bubble Bobble thrown in. It's like a side-on platformer 2-player game. So that's where we are 30 years later with TenGen. Dave, do you think this is a fitting use of a defunct name?
Yeah, to be honest, TenGen is not a top-tier name. Neither is Domark, for that matter. I remember Domark doing a lot of bad games.
On the whole, I seem to remember TenGen games coming out quite a few years after the arcade equivalent.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if that was because they had the rights to the pre-split Atari stuff, but not the post-split. It did make me wonder about TenGen, so I looked at 3 Atari games from my shelf. I looked at Gauntlet, I looked at Star Raiders, and I looked at Gauntlet 2, and they don't mention TenGen at all, which would seem to be right because...
Well, those are pre-87.
Gauntlet 2 might not be. Trademark 1985 by Atari Games, but I'm not sure when the game was released. But these would be, I think, not owned by TenGen, so they wouldn't be able to do them. I'm not sure. But the point is, TenGen weren't everything about Atari, even in games. They're not Rainbow Arts, they're not Bitmap Brothers, Ultimate, DMA, etc. And I don't even think that most people would know that they were Atari, apart from people who had somehow picked it up in the periphery of reading magazines. As for this guy, though, good luck to him. There's plenty of new places masquerading as the old names. It's not just related to games. If you go into shops like Argos in the UK, and I know it happens in the USA too, you'll see brand names that you remember from 30 or 40 years ago, and you think, oh, are they still around? Oh, good. Except it's not the brand names. It's just companies are long gone. Someone's brought the rights to use that brand name, and they're sticking the label on cheaply made goods to make you think that this is a better thing than it is. So this guy's obviously head and shoulders above that practice. The quality he's producing, Z and Z, looks like a really competent game. It does look very nice though. Looks like a very Nintendo Entertainment System game, but it looks nice and fast and smooth and clever. So I hope he actually sets his sights on the Atari machines though, because you could argue that's where TenGen really belongs.
Oh, I don't know about that. You could argue that, but they were always set up to release the games to various different platforms. So I would like to see Z and Z ported to other systems. I'd
like to see new 7800 style games released for the 2600 plus.
But wouldn't you like to see that done just as Atari?
I would like to see third-party games as well as Atari.
No, I mean the Atari branding is what I mean.
Mm.
But I honestly can't think of a better use for an old, expired, forgotten about name. You know, it's so much better than it being sat on a company refusing to let anyone else use it, or ending up on a bar of soap, like like you said, going down the supermarket and look, there's some Atari matey bubble bath.
Oh, that's Commodore. That's Commodore.
Commodore, yes, yeah.
That's what they did. And more meaning things like
phone.
Like furniture, you go and see some furniture, and you're like, "Oh, look, that's a decent brand of furniture." No, it's not. They were 30 years ago. They're not now.
Yeah. I think this is great that it's ended up in Jeff's hands, and it's got me thinking about what other brands might still be out there waiting to be pulled out of vaults or have been expired.
Well, I think people have had the same idea, and they've done it several times with Commodore and Amiga, because I think there's now about 10 different places that own the rights to Commodore and Amiga.
Yeah.
They've split it up.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if anyone else picks up any of these old publishers' names. Gauntlet 2, by the way, 87, it was ported to all the different systems, so that's sort of right on the cusp of when TenGen came out. But we did have things like, I think, Paperboy 2 or TenGen, hard driving.
So it was.
Yeah. Here in the UK, I've got a selection of hard-shelled, clear, transparent cased games, which are published by Domark, TenGen games, like hard driving. And they're quite unique. They stand out compared to other big box games because they're a bit like the water-graded coffins off the shelf. That's how they came, but it also means a lot of them get cracked over the years. But they look nice.
Yeah, they haven't aged very well. I've had 2 or 3.
I see you looking around at your shelves there.
I've had 2 or 3 hard drive. I should have one here somewhere. I think only one of them is in a presentable condition.
If you move all those Spanish flags out the way, you might be able to see the good stuff.
There you go.
There's one, hard driving, yeah. And there's the TenGen logo down at the bottom.
Domark, TenGen, Atari ST, computer and video games hit.
There you go.
There you go.
And of course, over in the US, they would have been distributed by, I don't know, Mindscape or some other company, but probably with still the TenGen branding on there. So I applaud this, and I look forward to seeing other indie devs. If you're looking to get noticed, to get the word out about your new project, see if you can find some obscure old developer's name that's fallen by the wayside. Yes, Dave.
Only if you can match the vibe, though, because this
match the vibe.
Yeah, don't do something that doesn't match the name. Like this does match because they did do NES games.
Yeah, I agree.
Housekeeping.
I'd like to welcome 3 new patrons this week, so thank you very much to Technic, to Robin, and to Lemmy.
Thank you, guys. Very kind.
Where can people go, Neil, if they want to join the ranks of the twirlers?
They can go to patreon.com/thisweekinretro.
Mike Daly of DMA, not only did he put a picture of himself in a shirt, not in court, has linked
trousers. And trousers.
Has linked us to. Does he not wear trousers at the weekend? Is that what you're trying to say? Mike Daly of DMA has linked us to another video on YouTube on a tour of DMA design. Now, this is around Lemmings 2 time, he says, around 92, 93. So it's a few years earlier than Grand Theft Auto, and it shows because there's hardly any staff there in comparison. And this one does feature Mike, at least, if only, the back of his head. Link in the show notes. We got lots of interest in the earliest crime game. So we asked the question, what's the earliest kind of crime game in the same lines as Syndicate? Because last week we were talking about Syndicate, a game in which you were a criminal gang trying to take over the world. Now, someone suggested Elite, and that is a good suggestion. It's entirely legitimate to play Elite as a pirate, as a bounty hunter, as a trader, or as a contraband trader. Lots of options. Plenty of those are criminal, and in the spirit of the game, it allows that. Someone else suggested Ultima 4, and I'm going to say a no to that. Yes, you can ignore the virtues or even further, you can attack innocents in towns and then get attacked by guards, but it doesn't really lead anywhere. And you absolutely must be virtuous to get anywhere in the game. At a stretch, though, it is a big enough game world that you could entertain yourself ignoring the main quest and just exploring it. But it isn't like later Ultima games where you could be bad and still continue, and the game in some ways would make it more difficult for you, companions leaving, etc. But you could be a bad avatar later if you wanted.
Happy Coding also made a thread, Dave, about asking the question about what were the earliest games where you were a criminal, the earliest crime games. Goldair was in there talking about Death Race, which we talked about last week as well, where you go around mowing down people, which is just wanton violence, really. It's not organized crime, just straight up murder. And he also went on to suggest the thief class introduced in D&D in 1974. Not a video game specifically, but it's a good point. It's a criminal class. And of course, lots of D&D fed into video games later.
Happy himself, though, had a few suggestions. He suggested Getaway, which is an Atari 8-bit game in the style of GTA, of course, many years before it. Lock and Chase is a 1981 arcade game, and Bank Heist is a 1983 Atari 2600 games. They're themed as crime, but they're really just Pac-Man type games. He found a 1984 DOS game written in BASIC, which seems to be a clone of Star Trader, called Drug Wars, which has you change to become a drug dealer. And I think that got rehashed quite a few times over the years.
Oh, yes.
Appeared in different places, online games, once we had the internet as well.
Yeah, BBS boards,
yeah,
Drug Wars online, all the rest of it, yeah.
And of all the places he finds, the two games that I think are definitely in the spirit of what we're asking, Mugsy from 1984 and They Stole a Million from 1986. But why are the best examples of crime games on the ZX Spectrum? Does that say something about Specky users, Neil? Mugsy is a turn-based strategy game where you try to become a powerful gangster, and They Stole a Million is where you build a team of criminals to conduct a heist.
Another game that might be worth looking into is one called Speed Rumbler. I don't know if you've come across that.
Speed Rumbler.
It's very GTA-like. So you drive around in a car mowing down and killing people, but you can also get out of the car and walk around and shoot people and then get back in the car. I did ask Mike about this years ago, and he said, no, never heard of that. It came out in 1986. So that's another sort of, I wouldn't call it organized crime again,
no,
but it's violent. So so thank you to our listeners. I'm sure there are earlier games as well. So get involved in the discussion over at reddit.com/r/this week in retro, and let us know if you can think of any others.
On to briefs now. Microsoft Notepad finally gets spell check and autocorrect. Thanks to Christ of Why Don't You for letting us know. I agree with the comments, though. This is a mistake. Make it more like Notepad++ and not like Write. I do like that they've added tabs to it, though.
Chiptune.app is a JavaScript chiptune music player submitted by Trevor Keverson on the subreddit. Really handy. Lets you just pop in and listen to chiptunes without having to download players or plugins or anything like that. And as a really nice cherry on the top, it uses a blue and yellow color scheme, which reminds me both of MS-DOS and also an Amstrad CPC. So you can't go wrong.
Mick Woods lets us know about a wireless tank mouse for the Amiga, but it's actually something we covered on Tour some time ago when it was being kickstarted. It was a great success. It was funded, and I've got mine here. I think, did you back it as well, Neil? I'm sure you did.
Yes, I've got one of those. Tank mouse.
What we probably didn't come back to say, that we should have come back to say, maybe this was pre-housekeeping times, is that they are on general sale, and they have been since the Kickstarter was finished. So this is an example of a Kickstarter project that's going to become just a normal general product, quite like what Immortal Joysticks has done, because Kickstarter succeeded, and now Andrew is selling them individually, and you can buy them by themselves. A success for the community.
The German Navy is replacing 8-inch discs in their systems with an emulated solution. This is on their frigates. 8-inch discs they were obsolete by the late 70s, so they're only 50 years behind, and hopefully the Danish Navy will be following them by removing barcodes, which they still have on their ships, Dave, because they like to Scandinavian.
Oh, no. No. Ben Heck has made a new Game & Watch. He's been working on it since 2020, and it's an emulation of the segment display, but not a segment display. So Game & Watch were little handheld devices from Nintendo for people who didn't have anything better. But they were really well made and polished. They were great games to play, and if you got into them, quite compelling. The one he's made is a Tapper clone.
Like Tapper. We did have a Game & Watch collection on display at the Cave, and I should say a quick thank you to Alex, who loaned them to us. He took them back this weekend, and we're going to create a new display in that area, but they always attract people for that very reason. Very playable, very addictive. We'll talk about addiction later, and lots of fond memories for Game & Watch.
In fact, talking about DOS games, these are the antidote to DOS games.
Yeah, they are. They are. A new Kickstarter called Legends of Adventure aims to tell the story of Sierra Online. So hot off the back of, it was Ken Williams released his autobiography a couple of years back, and also, what was the game? The Colossal Cave remake they did. They're finding success and interest in being part of the industry again, whether it's telling the old stories or coming up with new software. And now they're involved in a video documentary about their history. It's not cheap, though. $45 if you want to back a digital copy of this documentary. But check it out. The link is in the show notes.
And there's loads more in the subreddit, including a GameCube network adapter for the memory card slot, Analog announcing new aluminium pockets, DIY 16 megabyte sims, a bizarre use for an old GameCube, Football Glory.
What's that?
Football Glory is a Sensei Soccer clone.
What is Football Glory? Not feeling any football glory. There's a chance there, Dave. Come on. How did you not put the knife in there?
Oh, I don't really want to put the knife in that bad. A tap-toe card reader from Mister, which is very similar to the barcode thing that you have. I think based in the same libraries. Isn't it?
It's very cool. It's more comprehensive than what we've set up. And it's a great little thing.
There's loads more in the subreddit. Go and have a look when you've got 5 minutes. A few episodes back, we talked about a really interesting topic. We talked about addiction to video games, or at least we talked about the time spent playing them and media accusations that it was a harmful activity and the kids were wasting their time and they couldn't control themselves. And
we also recently looked at our Steam libraries and how many games we'd played, how much we'd spent on games we hadn't played, and how many hours we'd put into games. Yeah.
We did make it the question of the week, and we got some staggeringly interesting replies from people on it. People put real thought into it. We thanked you at the time. We'll thank you again now. Thank you for putting such effort into giving us the honest and revealing answers. Some of the replies from listeners talked about their own children and what they've had to do to try and cut out the harmful aspects of it. But throughout all of that, there was an unquestionable acceptance from our listeners replying that video games are wonderful experiences that enrich our lives. I said earlier that I'd die on the hill that DOS gaming is great. Well, here's another hill I'll die on. Video games are a force for good. And I'm sure you'll agree with me there, Neil.
Every hobby, good in moderation. Every hobby brings joy and happiness. Gaming is no different. So I agree, it is a force for good. But technically, Dave, it is not possible to die on two hills.
I'll die on whichever hill people make me die on. There may be more hills. A range of hills. The Dave Hills.
Split you up and spread you across hills.
Yeah. It's come up again in The Guardian. And in fact, it's this week's most upvoted submission, thanks to Dr. Local for submitting it. The title of it is, It's Not Them, It's Us. The real reason teens are addicted, it's put addicted in quote marks, to video games. And while it's not a direct response to This Week in Retro, it might as well be. Maybe they listen to the show, I'm sure they do. I think most likely, though, it's because it's a big issue affecting all parents because of how big gaming is. It's actually a response to their own article, which came out almost 2 weeks ago now, called Totally Wired, Why Are So Many Young People Addicted to Video Games? Now, that article is harrowing reading. It goes into detail about people with crippling addictions that lead to medical intervention. The young man in question, Jake, went through an awful time. It's not a pleasant read, but it does at least have a happy ending. But the article linked, though, is the one responding to the rather grim one that talks about the reasons behind it. And here's a complete paragraph from the article that explains what the problem is. And even without parental anxiety hemming them in, where are teens to go? In the last decade, YMCA data shows that more than 4,500 youth work jobs have been cut and 750 youth centres shut down.
The local youth club that I went to as a kid was just brilliant. In fact, there were two that I went to over the years, and it was just the place that you went to hang out with. You met kids that you didn't necessarily hang out with at school. You had activities you could do. It was brilliant, and it's horrible that they're all being cut and they're disappearing. Yeah.
According to the Music Venue Trust, 2 grassroots music venues are closing every week. The nightclub industry is in freefall. Teenagers can't hang around in parks without arousing the suspicion of overprotective adults who have decided that these rare recreational spaces belong to their toddlers alone. City squares and skate parks and pedestrian zones that were once public are now being insidiously privatised, monitored via CCTV and policed by private security guards. So that's what the Guardian article says, and obviously I'm 30 odd years past that, so it doesn't affect me directly, but I had the benefits of these things and people don't have it now. People need spaces to go and exist in that aren't monetized in particular, but these spaces to go out and exist in, and they're shutting down. I mean, if that's the last 10 years, the demise of it didn't start 10 years ago, it started 30 years ago. So that's only what's happened in the last 10 years. What do you think, Neil?
It's a really interesting article. It opens with the lines, "Locked in their bedrooms, playing video games into the small hours. Children as young as 10 years old are now addicted to their consoles." And that just made me think, mate, where have you been for the last 40 years? Is this news to you? And 10 years old is probably a bit late to the party. You know, we were banging on computers at 5, 6 years old. So that set the tone for the article at the start. And I thought, oh, this is going to be terrible. But it does actually get into a more interesting, more well thought out article. Talks about some extreme addiction cases. The story of Jake, who took a knife from the kitchen to harm himself when his devices were taken away and he couldn't game, for example. He was, without doubt, in the grips of an addiction. And in this instance, that addiction was gaming. And the article talks about the triggers that led him to his actions, such as his mother moving away from the country without him when he was 5, and then he would later follow. And it goes on to say it is common for addiction to stem from multiple underlying factors. I'm seeing sometimes a drive and compulsion to use gaming as a savior. Many of them hate their daily reality. Many of them cannot wait to grow up. Many of them are very anxious about the marriage or mental health of their parents. And it just shows you how multifactorial addiction is and how gaming disorder is just one more manifestation of things going wrong. So that's all read verbatim from the article. So it does come around to that idea that, yes, while the headline is a classic, video games are bad, kids are addicted, boo, video games, it goes on into a lot of detail about addiction, about the causes, in Jake's example, the underlying causes that led him to addiction. And it just so happened that gaming was the addiction that he had. He had access to something that he could really hook on to, and that gave him the escapism that he needed, and he became addicted to that. So I think the real headline, Dave, is simple. Addictions shouldn't be ignored in whatever form they manifest, gaming or otherwise. What do you think?
I think that's fair. It's fair to say that the problem here isn't the video games, it's Jake's circumstances and Jake's individual makeup that led to this. It's not the games. The games are just how it manifested. Behaviour
is communication,
yes,
as we're so often told. And addiction is a type of behaviour that is communicating something. And it's just important that they have the help around, or we have the help around us to listen, understand, and offer help.
I do, though, think that some games are hard-coded to play into addiction, particularly online games like League of Legends, that style of games, and Fortnite and so on. They're designed to keep people coming back. and that's obviously harmful. And I guess that's why some parents ban those type of games. But I do.
Or the example in, for example, football games where you have you buy or earn player packs, and then you have that sort of gambling moment. What players are going to come out of the packs? We never had that in kickoff or sensible soccer. It was just, right, let's have a game of football. Let's go.
But I think we do need to do more for teenagers. We have much better stuff for toddlers now, but when it comes to teenagers, we've pulled the rug out from under them, and it needs to change. Otherwise, they will find community where they can find community, and that means online games, and it means online games where it's made by EA to cynically take advantage of addiction and get money from them. So from the responses from our listeners last time, it's clear that it can be very problematic. But again, I'm back on this hill. Games are good.
Other cynical video game developers also exist.
Yes, EA are just the example I've picked, but there's more. There's more following that type of model. It's not unique. Mobile games, I think, are a horrible example of it as well.
Time now for our community question of the week. Now, last week's question was all about being naughty in video games. What are your favorite moments of being bad in video games? Maybe it's a game in which you're supposed to be bad. Maybe it's not, and you found a way to be evil. Share your evil stories. I'm looking forward to these ones, Dave. Have you taken the question out of contest mode?
I have it slammed out of contest mode. It's over.
Okay. Of course, this is the top answer from Tech Made Easy UK. Trapping the butler in the freezer in Tomb Raider. I think it was Tomb Raider 2, was it? That you could trap the butler in the freezer. This is one of the few games that my wife Lily has played, and she'll often go around the house doing an impression of a frozen butler for that reason. Shaking a tray. In fact, whenever she's got a tray with anything on it, she'll shake it as if she's a frozen butler. Hi, Lily. I know you listen.
Hello, Lily. Lord Borak 316 suggests, he says that the Amiga died. No, he doesn't. He says, Skyrim, after completing the game in Goody Two Shoes mode, I made a dark elf vampire character. His aim to stealth murder as many people as possible. With mods, I managed to murder whole towns by stealth. Skyrim was lovely and quiet after I finished. I will say that games starting from perhaps Ultima 5 in tiny ways, and then going all the way to Skyrim and Morrowind and all the rest of it, RPGs did start to allow more and more ways to be bad, and that's, even if you're not being bad, play a game where it's an option enriches the game.
Rich Neptune says, running down pensioners and window cleaners on Turbo Esprit. The fact the game had a penalty point score just made it so enticing. I'm not even sure I played the game properly once more after that. So, yeah. And then Indigo Prime replied with, I hadn't thought about that in decades. Thanks. Yes, me too. Very, very, if not the first example, very early example of an open world game, Turbo Esprit, going around running down window cleaners. Like it.
Nuclear silo for sale. Do you see this one? This is great. I think we've all pretended to be AFK before and then shot someone when they go for the cheap knife points. Not that I would know anything about this behaviour. Trapping Sims is perhaps the most evil, second only to obeying traffic laws in GTA while your friend's watching the couch.
That is evil. That is really evil.
Oh, and the next one, Gavin J 64738 says, using the Skull of Mundane in Ultima 4. Oh my god, so much fun killing all the city guards, but you lose all your avatar points.
Lots of other great answers in there. Fallout 3 detonated the nuke in Megaton or Megaton and made some other evil decisions. We've got Kerbal Space Program probably caused death and disaster far more often than success. Go on, Dave, what are you chuckling at there?
Just Kerbal, just the way Kerbal's designed with their big bulging eyes, and it all goes wrong for them. It's really charming.
Luring Sims into the swimming pool and then putting a wall around them, says Weekly Interest. Terrible. Quite a few mentions of the Sims. Garanga bonus, running the monks over in GTA, says Fuskit. Oh, I'm going to read through the rest of these later because there's so many.
It's well worth a read of them.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone for taking part. And that leads us to this week's community question of the week. We talked about the DOS era. We discussed about it being a great time for gaming. But what was the greatest single year for gaming, in your opinion, and why? Is that a fair question?
Yeah,
we haven't had that question before.
No, we haven't. Justify your one single year. So stick to the rules. One single year, 1 year only. Justify why it's the best year for it. And we will read out the winners.
Why it can be the games, but it can also be your personal circumstances. What was going on in your life that made it such a great year for gaming? Had you just got your first car and you could get to the arcade yourself? Or, give us lots of details. We really like reading your stories. Reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro to take part. Patreon.com/thisweekinretro to support the show. Thank you to PCBWay.com. Thank you to producer Duncan, and thank you to you all for listening and taking part in the show. We'll see you the same time next week. Bye-bye. I'm waving. Dave's waving.
Bye.
This Week in Retro was presented by Neil from RMC the Cave and Dave. It was produced by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcaster, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/thisweekinretro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. If you watch This Week in Retro on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.